Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke making some tough statements this week, telling Congress they aren't pulling their weight when it comes to improving the economy. That was the opening statement he made in front of the Congressional Joint Economic Committee. Let's take a look. So Ben Bernanke says the Fed is doing their job, but Congress and the White House aren't. Now, we were talking about that earlier. Joining us back is Dee Dee Benkie, public accountant Ed Garber, and Paul Oster. He is the former banker and credit expert. We thank you for your expertise and thank you for spending an hour with us here at Fresh Outlook.
You're welcome.
Let's talk about Ben Bernanke. What about his comments this week about blaming Congress and the White House? What are your thoughts about that, Paul?
Well, if you watched it on Wednesday, it was by far the greatest high wire tightrope act I've ever seen. And I don't envy his position at all. You know, it's an incredible job right now in trying to alleviate the long-term fears that this 0% interest rate has created. At the same time, trying to spurn the economy on because until we get to a healthy economy, our fundamentals are basically the same that they were when the recession started. But because of his accommodative policies, thankfully, we're in a position we are in today. But if you removed the things that they've done thus far, and I mean, you know, the Treasury, we would be in trouble.
Is our country's debt the biggest problem?
I think it absolutely is. It's crushing. Like I said before, it's unsustainable because, you know, when interest rates do rise, we're going to have to at some point in time, as you said, then what's going to happen? And then we're going to have to cash in, and the interest rates are going to go so high for the government too, and the debt's going to be, we're going to end up like Greece if we don't watch it.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, taking a look at Greece and Spain and some of the countries that have had such enormous problems, if we don't tackle this debt, could we ever be in that position? And I'll throw it back to you, Paul.
I think the problem is, though, you know, Congress, like they've done so many other times, now they want it fixed. You know, they've gotten to a point right now, they want it fixed, and they want it fixed right now. And the problem with that could be we could see a sharp contraction in our GDP and the growth that we've had thus far during this recovery. So we just have to be careful and, again, walk the tightrope. Over the past 2 years, we have lowered the deficit by $2.4 trillion, and that's a move in the right direction. At least it didn't go the other way, and I know a lot of that has to do with smoke and mirrors and the way we do our accounting, but at least it's a trend in the right direction.
Well, we were talking about higher.
Sorry, I don't think a drip is a trend. I think we need to have a few more of those for it to be a trend.
Well, let's talk about the hiring, and I know, Ed, you were talking about this earlier. Are we seeing it at a desirable level?
Well, people are hiring people as low as they can because people are losing jobs at $100,000. They hope to be hired at $60,000. So and that's if they get hired. And if people are too old, they have two strikes against them: the rate they're making and their age. So it's really not helping too much at all.
Yeah.
Paul?
There's just lots of conflicting data in regard to unemployment right now. It looks like we're putting 200,000 jobs in the private sector, non-farm payroll jobs, but at the same time, we're at 7.5 minimum unemployment rate still.
And there's so many people that I know, from friends to friends' husbands, that are balancing two jobs now because to make up for what they lost in their previous job. Dee Dee?
Yeah, I just think that Ben Bernanke is right. I think the Congress, they are misstepping. It's happened for several years now on both sides. And it is true, they want it fixed now, and it can happen overnight. But I do think they have to take drastic measures as far as cutting the debt and cutting the waste. There's so much waste in Washington, D.C. It's really put us in a bad situation.
Now I'm going to put the Ben Bernanke cap on each one of you, and you guys get to each give me your quick fix. Ed, we're going to put you in the hot seat on this one.
Well, they just have to make it so keep interest rates lower, so people could borrow at a decent rate to keep the housing market up there.
But is that sustainable? Is that something that can continue for a very long time?
I'm not sure, but it could help. Some things helps and some things it hurts. So, but with the hiring, they have to hire people at their normal rates. But bottom line, the CEOs want to make their money, so they're hiring people less and less to keep their own money. That's why CEOs make all these millions of dollars bonuses at the end of the year.
But how are you going to fix that?
I don't know. That's what I have to find out from maybe Paul and
You
David.
get to wear the Ben Bernanke hat right now. Paul, what would you do, or what would be some of the things that you would do to fix the economy?
Certainly well above my pay grade, but personally, I agree. I think we have to maintain the current environment because until we're in a healthy economy, we're going to be vulnerable for these setbacks and contractions. So maintaining the 0% interest rate, I know that creates some long-term concerns with inflation. Look at the savers, people that are dependent upon their fixed incomes and their savings and their government bonds that they bought years ago. They're not getting any money back on those investment vehicles. So that's troublesome. But until we're in a healthy economy, we have to maintain the course.
So you're not going to call this a healthy economy, even though some folks are?
No, fundamentally, I personally believe we're in the same place that we were when we started. It's just because, again, fortunately, Chairman Bernanke took the steps and the accommodative policies to save us to this point. It was supposed to be short term. We're 4 years into it, and hopefully we're going to start to come out of the recovery.
And Dee Dee, you get to play the Fed chairman. What would you do?
Well, all kinds of things like eliminate the IRS. No, I'm not kidding. But I do think taxes are a big problem, but I think the spending is just worse. So there's a lot of ways in DC. I mean, there are these museums, like a cowboy museum that is in Oklahoma for no reason that the federal government pays for. I mean, and that's small, but guess what? When you have those silly things in the bridges to nowhere and all this pork barrel projects, it adds up. So I think even if we took like a cut across the board for everything, it would at least help. I mean, that's being too simplified, but we got to do what we got to do.
Well, what about the taxes? I mean, are they too high right now? What can we do?
Well, the taxes it's not too high, it's just that there's so many loopholes. What's hurting a lot of people is this AMT tax. When you think you get all your deductions for real estate taxes, state withholding, you have to add them back for the AMT, which is never meant to hurt the normal people, the middle class, which is hurting the middle class a lot. It's hurting most of my clients. The middle class's AMT has to be abolished now.
Paul?
I would agree also. The tax code has never been more complex. The average person doesn't understand how to maneuver throughout it. And the things that they did, again, look good on paper. But if you speak to the people on the streets and in the local markets, it's hurting them. And it's hurting the middle class for sure.
Yeah, because their taxes went up. They weren't supposed to, but they did. Everyone's taxes went up. And in the middle class, it's very hurtful.
Well, Paul, you're just joining us, so I want to throw this next question to you. The dollar is still the strongest currency in the world. Talk about the cheaper imports, and are we exporting more?
Cheaper imports, I don't know about that. I guess in certain instances that's very much true, but I'm a firm believer that the market sets the price for everything. It's very hard to put a value on any asset. When you look at supply and demand and the marketing geniuses, they create these values. How much is an iPhone worth? Well, if you asked a 16-year-old, it's worth $1 million, and they'd be willing to pay for it on a credit card.
Or their parents.
Yeah, that's right.
Credit card.
But at the end of the day, careful what you wish for. We have this global economy, and it seems to me that things are evening out as opposed to getting better for us in terms of importing inexpensive items. And exporting for some things have definitely increased, and that's a good sign also for us.
Well, and we were talking about the National Association of Realtors, that house sales rose nearly 10% in April. That's certainly good news because people are going to find their houses to be equity, and they're going to put more money into that. So that's some good news.
But there is also some data, a lot of foreign investors are coming into our markets right now and buying up these homes. There are hedge funds that are literally buying hundreds of homes at a time to hold them. If you remember the garden apartment craze, back in the 80s and 90s, that's happening again. So history certainly repeats itself, and it seems to be happening again.
Well, the housing market, I once saw in Good Morning America years ago, Donald Trump once said, you cannot build more land, except in Japan when they build land on top of the houses, but land is the best deals you can make. That's the best investment you could ever make if you have the money to do it.
And it's a long-term investment vehicle at this point. So the average person, although real estate is a good investment, it might not fit their portfolio. A hedge fund, on the other hand, looks at it. They're not flipping. The days of flipping the homes are over. They're looking at buying them and holding them for 10 or 15 years and renting them. The rents have gone through the roof. Mm-hmm. And when the market does come back, because it will, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years, at some point the real estate is going to appreciate again, and they'll sell them and make a pretty penny.
Well, if a lot of clients that buy fixer-uppers, they fix them up and then they sell them, they flipping them, they're making a lot of money now. As
Yep.
long as you're able to do it yourself, as long as you don't have to hire people to do it, they're buying them at a cheap rate for the foreclosures from the banks, and they're flipping them and they're making a lot of money.
I guess the best advice to everybody is to be diversified. How
Yes.
about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, don't go away, everybody. Don't you guys go away either. We're going to continue our discussion about some dollars that are missing. Is there a showdown shaping up about whether Apple sidestepped tens of billions of dollars in taxes?